UFC 290 went down last night, and let me tell you guys, that was one of the greatest UFC cards that I have ever seen. Let's talk about the fights. There's a lot to get into. Let's start off with Robbie Lawler versus Nico Price. And what a way to go out for ruthless Robbie Lawler. He needed that. I did not want to see him get hurt anymore. Quick knockout uppercut in the clinch on Nico Price. What a fairy tale ending. What a fairy tale ending for the legend. I'm a big fan of Robbie Lawler, man. He was one of my favorite fighters to watch. Super exciting. A great guy. Every UFC fan loves Robbie Lawler. So that was just the perfect way to go out, because in MMA, there's not fairy tale endings like in other sports, but this was one of them, and it was great to see. All love and respect to Robbie Lawler. Now let's move on to the first fight on the main card, Bo Nickal versus Val Woodburn. Now, Val Woodburn didn't really stand a chance in this fight. Let's be real, guys. Bo Nickal was always going to win. And let me tell you something. When I made my predictions video for this fight, I called him Val Woodbum. And I thought that was his name. I thought his name was Val Woodbum. I guess it's fitting now, but I thought that was just funny. But that's besides the point. That's besides the point. People betting on Val Woodburn, I mean, what are you doing? You're throwing a few bucks on it, sure, but people throwing a lot of money on it. It's just stupid. Bo Nickal was just always going to win that fight. Short notice fight for Val Woodburn. I think he was just signed like literally 4 days ago. He was just never winning that fight, guys. Let's be real. First round started. Bo Nickal fakes the level change out of the orthodox stance and catches Val Woodburn with a perfect right hook, lands a few more combos on him, and that's all she wrote. There's nothing much you can really say about this fight. It was a huge win for Bo Nickal. He didn't really need to use his wrestling. He showed he had some striking, and he didn't really get hurt. I don't think he was hit once, so maybe he could get into that octagon pretty soon. I'm really interested to see what the UFC does with Bo Nickal. I see a lot of people shouting for a top 15 ranked fight, and I just think that's too soon. That's too soon for him. There's no need to rush him. There's really no need to rush Bo Nickal. He has youth on his side. He's a young guy. There's no need to rush him into top 15 right now, because if he loses, there's some of that hype that will be lost. Nonetheless, it was a huge win for Bo Nickal. Great start to the main card. This event was just insane, man. Moving on to Jalen Turner versus Dan Hooker, and man, am I disappointed in Jalen Turner, man. If you want to be a champion, you got to be beating old guys like Dan Hooker, and not to mention his failed weight cut. I think he missed by over 2 pounds, so not super professional in that aspect. Just a disappointing night for Jalen Turner. I was very, very confident in picking Jalen Turner to win this fight. I think he was a very underrated striker before this fight, and I think he was just going to walk past Dan Hooker pretty easily. I think this was a shitty stylistic matchup for Dan Hooker. I didn't think he was going to be able to strike on the outside against the 6'3" lightweight in Jalen Turner, or did I think he was going to be able to get onto the inside of Jalen Turner, because Jalen Turner has really nice knees, elbows, and I just think it was going to be a bad night for Dan Hooker, but I was proven wrong. The first round was pretty slow. Both guys were fighting from the outside, trying to find their range, but I did give it to Jalen Turner because I think he landed at a higher clip and was landing the cleaner punches. So I was pretty confident that Jalen Turner was going to get a finish in the second round, but no, Jalen the Fraud Turner just had to prove me wrong. And then the second round comes. What a fucking round. Dan Hooker just eats the perfect head kick from Jalen Turner, and his chin turns back the clock to his old Dustin Poirier fight days. Wow, I don't know how the fuck he ate that head kick. And then later in the round, he comes back and clips Jalen Turner with a huge left hand and then just puts it on him for the rest of the round. And I think he stole the round at the end. I think he did more damage than Jalen Turner. And wow, we had a war going on at this point. And the third round was another big one for Dan Hooker. He seemed like he had the better gas tank. He was beating up Jalen Turner when he was on the ground, and I think he banked the round, and I think he won the fight. I was super disappointed in Jalen Turner. His striking defense was really, really bad. His fight IQ needs some work. I was just a bad night for Jalen Turner, and if he wants to become a champion, like I thought he would eventually, maybe eventually would become a champion, he just needs to improve on these things, and you need to be beating guys like Dan Hooker, as I said earlier. And now we're in another situation where the old veteran beats this young prospect who's on the come up, and I don't really know what the UFC is going to do now, because I don't think Dan Hooker is going to really go anywhere. I don't. He's old. I don't think he's going to go anywhere. And what do you do with Jalen Turner now? Because I thought he was a good prospect, but he got fraud checked tonight. He really did. He has some big flaws that he needs to check in his game. So I'm not really sure what the UFC is going to do. Put in the comments fights you guys want to see these guys do next. I'm not really sure. Moving up the card, we have to talk about, obviously, Dricus du Plessis versus Robert Whittaker, because what the fuck, man? The MMA world is just not real. It's just not real. Look at Dricus du Plessis versus Darren Till and Derek Brunson, and then compare him to how he fought last night against Robert Whittaker, it just doesn't make sense. It's laughable almost. Dricus du Plessis proved me wrong. He really did. I honestly thought he sucked. I thought he was a shitty mixed martial artist. Against Darren Till, he was shit. Against Derek Brunson, he was shit. Yes, he found the finishes, but he just didn't impress me. And like, let's be real. Let's be real, guys. I'm stuttering over my words. But let's be real. How did anybody think he was going to beat Robert Whittaker? Looking back at the tape, it just didn't seem possible. And somehow he proved me wrong, and he looked so much better last night. I think maybe the nose surgery helped him. The grappling, he's a great grappler, let me say that. He improved so much as a grappler, too. His striking looked a lot better. He looked more composed and more reinvented on the feet, too. And talking about Robert Whittaker, I hope it's just a bad night because he didn't look good. He looked slow. He didn't look like he really wanted to be in there. And I hope it's not the start of a bad turn for Robert Whittaker because, man, I love watching this dude fight. And if he starts to go down a bad path like some mixed martial artists do, it'd be sad, man. It'd be really, really sad for Robert Whittaker. This fight, we have to give all the praise to Dricus du Plessis. One thing he really improved, and not even improved, I just think he showed much more of it, was his grappling, man. His top pressure is really, really good. He's very active finding submissions, and I don't like bringing this up because all MMA fighters are strong, but this dude is a powerful, strong man. He kind of ragdolled Robert Whittaker on the ground, guys. Like, I don't want that to go under the rug. He, like, ragdolled Robert Whittaker. That hip toss in the first round was beautiful. He's a monster on the ground. Another thing I want to bring up is how unorthodox Dricus du Plessis is as a fighter, because I think that gave Robert Whittaker problems, because if you look at Robert Whittaker's record, the Cannoniers, the Vittoris of the world, they're standard traditional fighters. So when he finally gets in that octagon with an unorthodox, weird guy like Dricus du Plessis, I think he was a little starstruck, and it was weird for him. Also, his distance management was really, really good. Every time Robert Whittaker wanted to burst forward with a few strikes, he'd pull up that high guard, that tight high guard, and kind of just back up, and he wasn't really hit all that flush by Whittaker, who's known as an elite striker. All in all, it was just a ridiculous performance from du Plessis. He proved me so fucking wrong last night, and I'm really interested to see the du Plessis versus Izzy fight. That bullshit that they did in the octagon was stupid as fuck, but the fight's going to be crazy. The build-up is going to be insane. Now moving on to the co-main event in the flyweight championship of the world, Brandon Moreno versus Alexandre Pantoja. And let me tell you one thing, guys. These flyweights are so talented. Brandon Moreno, I gotta give him props, man. This dude has shown us how good he is over the years, and he gets into so many wars. He has treated us with so many wars. It sucks he's not the champion anymore, but full respect to Pantoja because he came out and he showed out. It was a really, really close fight, though. It was a war. I think Brandon Moreno got the better of Pantoja on the feet, but on the ground, Pantoja looked like an animal, man. His grappling is so good. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's a beast on the ground. I'll say it again, Pantoja's grappling is absolutely elite. He was able to hold down Brandon Moreno, which is really hard because Moreno is known for his transitions, his scrambles. He's really good at that type of stuff, and Pantoja just proved how good he is on the ground. It was a close fight. It could have gone either way, but I'd lean Pantoja, and I think most people would. When I score fights, I'm a very damage-heavy guy, but I still think Pantoja won. He had too much ground control. He's a monster, man. Moreno did have the better of Pantoja on the feet, but I think it's a lot closer than what a lot of people are saying. I don't think Brandon Moreno landed too flush. If anything, I think Pantoja landed the most flush strikes of the fight, and his groundwork complemented his striking super well. Alexandre Pantoja is the new flyweight champion of the world. I'm interested to see what the UFC does. Do they run it back? But I don't think they really should. Yes, Brandon Moreno is an absolute beast, but the flyweight division has been held up for a while due to the Moreno-Figueiredo fights and all that type of stuff. So I'd like to see a new opponent go in there with Pantoja, who is the new flyweight champion. Now moving on to the main event of the evening, the main event of UFC 290, Yair Rodriguez takes on the champion Alexander Volkanovski. And what can I say, man? How good is Alexander Volkanovski? It's unbelievable. I can't put into words how skilled this man is at mixed martial arts. It makes no sense. He's simply one of the greatest fighters of all time, and I called it. I called this fight down to a T. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna gas myself up a little bit, but I said Volk's gonna have a heavy wrestling strategy or base in this fight. He did. He dominated Yair on the ground, and I did say Yair has some defensive wrestling flaws, and Volk was able to expose him. And I also did say that Volk was going to be able to stand with Yair, and I think he did get the better of Yair on the feet. It was close, though, but a lot of people were counting out Volkanovski on the feet, which was just insane to me, because Alexandre Volkanovski, in my opinion, is the best striker in all of mixed martial arts. Alexandre Volkanovski just dominated Yair Rodriguez in the first 2 rounds on the ground. All that work from the Islam Makhachev camp just paid off. That was one of the best decisions he could have made, is fighting Islam Makhachev. And in that 3rd round, he was looking for that right hand the entire fight. He lands it. He hurts Yair Rodriguez. He starts ripping to the body on the fence, which was a really smart decision by the best fighter in the world, Alexandre Volkanovski. He level changes. He gets Yair to the ground, and he just beats him up into a TKO ground and pound finish in the 3rd round. I had TKO ground and pound finish in the 4th round. That was my prediction, so I was pretty fucking close. I'm not going to lie. At this point in time, we have to have discussions on where Alexandre Volkanovski ranks all time, because, man, in terms of pure skill, I think this guy is easily a top 5 fighter of all time. I don't think people realize how good this dude is. I don't think people realize how good he is. Yes, people say he's the best fighter in the world, but as the best fighter in the world, I still think he's underrated. That's how good he is. We are really witnessing one of the greatest fighters of all time. And say he beats Islam Makhachev, right? Becomes a double champion, goes back down, defends against Ilia Topuria, and then defends against Aljamain Sterling. Say he does that. I think at that point, he has a very, very good argument to being the best fighter we've ever seen in terms of pure skill, accolades, and title defenses and title wins and all that. I think he would be a surefire top 3 fighter of all time. That's how good he is. I'm super, super high on Volkanovski, and man, what a performance. The dude is just so good. Let me know what you guys think of the fights. UFC 290, I think, is the best card I've ever witnessed. That is one of the greatest UFC cards of all time. Finish after finish. Crazy. It was craziness, man. I'm super happy I bought the pay-per-view. Best $80 I could have spent my entire life. Let me know what you guys thought of the fights, and I'll see you later. Thanks for watching.